Okay, well, let's make a start. I think given the people that we've got on here, you should all know me by now, but if you don't, I'm Andy Venables, Managing Director of Hills Green. As ever with our rural roundtables, we like to keep things informal, and as there's just a small group on this morning, even better really, so hopefully we'll get a little bit more value out of the session today. So today we're going to be looking at communicating with your customers, your clients during a pandemic, something which we are all starting to have a steep learning curve to at the minute. So in terms of what we're going to be covering, we're going to look at considering your responsibility, reaching out to your clients and customers with new channels, the importance of having a good online presence and in particular a website, looking at how you're building relationships online and obviously any questions, but like I say, any questions that you've got as we go, please shout up. So given the niche that we're working in, I'm pretty certain all of you are in the agricultural niche. If not, you're definitely in the rural niche. And one of the biggest differences that we've got this year in 2020 is none of these familiar sites. Being unable to get out and about to the rural and agri shows, and obviously spending time not only meeting new customers and clients, but building relationships and catching up with current clients. So I'm going to say a quick show of hands, but I'm fairly certain all of you would have been attending these shows, particularly Platts. You seem to be at every agricultural show going usually. So really, I'd be quite interested to look at how you've adapted as a business during these times, and what have you changed, what are you doing differently now you've been unable to go to these agri shows. So quick sort of round the virtual table, we'll have some introductions, just simply your name, business, and what have you done differently as you're not attending these shows. Have you utilised any new channels at all to talk to your customers, communicate with them, and build relationships with them? So Nadi, because you are top of my screen, I'm going to put you on the spot and let you introduce yourself first.
So I'm Nadia from Platts. We mainly supply sawdust and bedding for dairy cows at the moment, dairy farmers, and throughout lockdown, we've really ramped up our email marketing. So we usually use a outbound telesales team, but we've had to reduce that right down, and we've been contacting existing customers via email, which is working well for us so far. We've sort of just dipped our toes in. So there's loads more we can do. So that's how we've been talking to our customers throughout lockdown.
Good stuff. Lydia?
Morning, I'm Lydia with Oakwood Valuation Surveyors. Firstly, Graham and Angela both send their apologies. They've got a lot of work on at the moment, so they weren't able to come this morning. And basically what we've been doing is we've been trying to get more of the online social presence. So we did have Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and we're just kind of pushing those channels and looking at email marketing as well. Obviously we've not been able to attend the shows either, so we've sent things out via post to our clients just to kind of let them know that we're still alive and well.
Good stuff. Andy?
Morning, I'm Andy. I work for Remenco, Progene and Netex. So we're not doing the physical shows obviously, but we are doing a couple of the online ones, or the virtual shows. I'm not 100% sure if they're great or not yet, but we'll try a couple. As well as that, we are all of our physical kind of resources, what we've been giving to the end users, we're trying to find ways to make that more digital. So yeah, we're kind of exploring options with that at the moment.
Good stuff. Is it Rachel?
It is, yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it's all
yeah,
right.
I mean,
I thought
I'm
I was like, it's either Rachel or Rebecca.
yeah, it's Rachel. Yeah, I mean, I work for Remenco with Andy, so he's covered some of what we're doing. We're looking at developing a digital brochure as well, rather than a sort of hard copy brochure. Our sales team have all been working from home, so they've been utilising Zoom and Teams for meetings. It's a little bit dragging some of them in from the dark ages, as in they've had to even learn how to sort of turn their computers on, some of our sales teams. So there has been a little bit of a technological challenge with some of the sales team. But in a way it's good because it's forcing us to be more digital, which is something we'd wanted to do for a while. But our sort of sales force and the industry has been a little bit reluctant, I think, to make that move. So from that point of view, it's a good thing, and it's forcing a little bit of change. So it's just looking at what we can do to sort of facilitate that with them as well. We have been looking at our social media options as well. Andy joined in some of your social media webinars that you did. So we've been looking at what we can do differently from there as well. And yeah, I'm not convinced about the online shows at the moment, but maybe that's been who's been organising them and what sort of response we've had from them, really. So we are going to get involved in one that the NSA are doing and see if that brings us anything new to the sort of to the plate, really. So
Yeah, that's really good insight to all of you. But just to jump in on what you were saying, Rachel, with the online shows, I'd probably agree in terms of the value or leads that you potentially get from them. It's more of almost just showing a bit of a united front and having a bit of brand visibility, I suppose, to these sorts of events. But definitely they don't replace the I suppose the value that you can get from having that face-to-face contact with prospects and with current clients on the showground. So Anna from Hills Green, will you just give a quick intro for everybody?
Yeah, so I'm Anna, and I'm now Senior Account Exec at Hills Green, as of yesterday, which is very exciting. So in terms of Hills Green, obviously we're always looking at like different channels that we can use. Primarily I am on like the social media side of things, and then also get involved in websites as well. So, yeah.
Good stuff. And Liz, I will let you introduce yourself and then hand over to you for the presentation.
Okay, so I'm Liz at Hills Green. I'm an account manager, so predominantly kind of work on the strategy side, and Anna basically helps me actually get work done. My background really focuses a lot on email marketing, and I've worked a lot with DM as well, so your direct mail. So kind of a bit of a crossover between online and offline. Yeah, so my background is predominantly email marketing and CRM side of things, but I also then have quite a strong background in animal health and hygiene.
Good stuff. Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen, so I'll pass the baton over to you.
Okay, I will share my screen and hope that it works. Can everyone see the screen? Yeah, perfect. So the first kind of thing we want to do is just kind of go around and ask you all if you want to raise your hand or just shout yes or no or whatever you'd prefer to do. But in terms of when you've looked at utilising new channels, have you actually given your customers a choice? So have you actively considered what your customer may or may not want from you? I think a show of hands is difficult because we've got hiding people today, so that's fine, we'll move on.
I'll come back.
I'm going to put people on the spot instead. So Nadia, you said that you did a lot more email marketing. What made you choose that channel as a way to communicate with your customers?
Because there was only so many of us in the office and we couldn't ring everyone. but actually it's been on our radar for quite some time, just to try and I guess reach a lot more people quicker, and not always with a sales approach, but just in terms of brand awareness and trying to develop loyalty with our customers. And so just to have a bit more communication that isn't hounding them on the phone, but,
Okay.
you know, catching people maybe on their own terms or within their own timescales. When we've been emailing throughout this time, we've been giving people the option to request a call back. So if they still want that call, then they can have that option. But actually the uptake on that hasn't been huge. So if people want to ring us, they do, but generally they'll just hit reply and drop an email or fill out a form. So
good stuff. We've seen a big change to that, you know, particularly with the farmers. You know, majority have now got smartphones and they're on the go, and the last thing they want is a sales call when they're just about to start milking or start shearing or lambing or whatever it is that they're in the middle of. They want to be able to reach out to those companies, like you say, on their terms, and when they're in the right headspace to have those conversations. The guys at Remenko, have you done any market research, speaking to your customers to understand sort of how they prefer to be communicated with before deciding the channels that you're going to be using?
I mean, it's a lot of the communication has been through the ABMs, because we've had you had a lot of the retail merchants that were either closed or they weren't allowing people in for quite a long time. So it really was down to our ABMs. Our database is generally held with the area managers, and they do a lot of the communicating directly with those merchants anyway, who would be our direct customers. So they've been handling that side of things, and there were a lot of people for quite a long time that weren't in a position to be able to have conversations with us, because they were so busy just trying to manage what they needed to manage in and out of the store. And then the farmer communication we would do via sort of the advertisement. We don't tend to send out a lot of emails to customers anyway, so that's something that hasn't really been something that's been done in general anyway. So there's still been some social media going on in terms of communication directly to farmers, but certainly with our direct customers, who would be the merchants initially, they weren't in a position to be able to have those conversations with us anyway, and they're just getting back now to starting to do some online training and things like that with us. So there's been a period of time where they weren't wanting communication, so we just sort of respected that and sat back and waited till it was the right time to pick it up again.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Rachel. Particularly early on, March, April time, people were generally firefighting, and they were doing whatever their business required at the time, and the last thing that they wanted was distractions from other people hounding them. So I think that's very sensible. Lydia, from your point of view, you've trialled a few different ways of communicating with your clients during lockdown. Did you get any sort of client feedback sort of before you took those decisions, you know, particularly sort of in terms of the direct mail, and potentially what were the responses from that?
Generally, with it being so specialised, and obviously not everyone needs evaluation, when we sort of do the direct mail, we don't always get a huge response from it anyway. But the response that we have got from it, because we link obviously everything up to our socials and things, is that they like our social presence, because it makes obviously us a bit more human, a bit more relatable. We're not just there to just do the valuation or the surveying. So we have had good sort of feedback in terms of our socials, but I probably would say that direct mail wise needs a bit of work. So I need to be in touch with Liz for that, just to sort of try and get a bit more of a response from that. So that's something that we want to sort of to work on, really.
Okay, good stuff. Sorry, Liz, I hijacked your presentation.
Fine, don't worry. I was just about to lose my voice, so it's fine. So the first thing I wanted just to touch on before we kind of highlight what we're going to do is talk about quickly kind of 3 key areas in terms of channels, all of which you've all between you tried to utilise, and hopefully it'll give you a bit more insight into kind of why we think the channels might work and maybe how you could do it. But the first one is actually corporate or social responsibility is kind of a big thing, a big area that I'm very interested in. And it's always about taking responsibility for what you're doing. So one thing I quite like to point out is a lot of people will just associate social responsibility as doing stuff that's good for the environment. Whereas it's not just that, that's a very narrow way of looking at it. You need to look at it in the sense of what you're doing across the board, internally, externally. Is it morally right? And obviously there's differing opinions when it comes to anything really, but it's just working out right from your customer's perspective. Am I respecting them? Am I doing what's right for them? So a few things that I've just kind of noted down that just to give you something to think about and just try and ask yourselves these questions is it's understanding that not everyone else will be feeling the same about what is happening. So obviously today was to talk about communicating with your customers during the pandemic. And whilst things have lifted and things have started to get back to normal for a lot of people, it's still not the same for everyone. And you're still going to have people that may be feeling more cautious or a bit more wary of things versus those of us that maybe don't really mind so much and aren't really as phased by it in a sense and just kind of roll with the changes. So it's just appreciating that and just making sure that when you're approaching someone, you don't just assume, oh, this customer let me go and have a chat with them face to face, so I'll just invite this customer and pop over and see them, because it's not going to be the same for both. Things have changed. So one thing that is quite worth noting is that you'll have customers and that you've worked with, or even kind of your distributors that you might have changed the way that you're working with them over the past few months, and they might have got to the point where they actually prefer the way you're working with them now. So it's a way to think of it in terms of whatever you're doing now, you've changed it for a reason. It is not a case of, oh, we're going to be going back to normal or the new normal and we'll just switch straight back to what we were doing before. It's about thinking about what you've been doing and maybe speaking to your customers and saying, like, do you prefer working in this way, like with online training rather than face-to-face? Like, would you prefer to carry on with this, doing it this way, and then we can revert back and maybe do the odd one that's maybe face-to-face? Likewise with the calls for yourself, Nadia, obviously you found that emails are working better anyway at the moment, but that just gives you food for thought, doesn't it? That if that's working well for you now, then obviously that's an avenue that you can continue to pursue and keep the phone calls drawn back, and just helps to give you a bit more of an idea of how you could work. The easiest way to approach it is really simple. It's ask your customers, and I bang on about it all the time, so I apologise if you've watched one of these before, you will have heard me say it, but it's one thing that everyone is pretty bad at. Including ourselves really. It's something you have to constantly remind yourself, and it's asking your customers. With anything that you want to do, your customers really are your best asset. So ask them what they want, ask them if they're comfortable with you going out to meet them face to face, ask them if they want to be communicated by email, post, on the phone, and just reiterate that. It could be even worthwhile, because you'll have set permissions for your contacts anyway. With things and how much has changed, it may be worth revisiting that and almost going back out to them and asking them to update their preferences, because their preferences are likely to have changed. So then I just basically wanted to ask everyone if you've asked your customers what they want you to do. So I won't ask for a raise of hands or anything, but it's just a bit of food for thought for you all, just in terms of maybe going away from this and actually pulling something together in terms of asking your customers what they actually want from you. It will save you a lot of time and resources in the long run. Once you know exactly what they want from you, you can tailor your communications better. You can just send them exactly what they want, when they want it, with the right message, and then it just saves you a lot of hassle and you'll get a better return from it. So then we just wanted to quickly go into reaching out with new channels. So I'm going to talk briefly around direct mail and email, and then I'll pass over to Anna for you. So it's a full team effort today. So she'll be talking you through social and your website. So when it comes to the way that you communicate, a lot of companies tended to rely on one specific channel as their primary channel. You might have dabbled in a few other areas, but traditionally, kind of, if you look at kind of the quite well-established companies, they tend to focus on the one channel. And the reason why that isn't going to work anymore, and to be fair, it hasn't really worked for the past probably decade or so, but it's your customers want more. They're more tech savvy. They're online, they're looking, so they're doing their research. It's gone past the point where you have someone that is quite happy just to get the same thing over or buy the same product over and over again. If you continue to put the price up each year, you're going to get those that will do their research, and that's happening more and more. And your customer is forever changing. So this is a very important one to think about, that maybe if you haven't looked at your target audience or your target customer for a while, your target customer from 5-10 years ago is going to be very different to what they are now, because your customer changes. Not only does like the actual person, if you look at kind of one customer in particular, they're changing, they're getting older, they're probably adapting to whatever they may be getting more tech savvy, they might not be. But then at the same time, when it comes to farmers in particular, there is that handover. There will be that time as the fathers, the mothers start handing over the buying power to the sons and daughters or whoever they're bringing in to look after the farm. And at that point, your customer is changing completely, and that's quite a drastic effect. So it's making sure that you're not just kind of looking at who your current customers are, but look at who they're going to be. So look at who you want, like say 5 years ahead, who's going to be your customer? Who should you be looking to kind of get on board with you now and start building that brand awareness? And the last thing you want to do is to just panic and all of a sudden realize, oh, our customers completely changed all of a sudden, and this really young demographic, and they don't know who we are, and they prefer this other brand that's been targeting them for the past few years. You kind of want to make sure that you try and get ahead of the curve and try and almost see if you can predict and kind of estimate who your customer is going to be. But the big thing is, how do you actually stand out? So some of the channels that we'll talk about with email and social, they make great channels, and they are kind of the top ones really as well in terms of ROI, especially email. But the digital world is very crowded, so that's why we wanted just to quickly kind of go into direct mail. So we received on average around 10,000 marketing messages a day. And half the time you won't realise that you're getting a marketing message, but it happens everywhere you go. It's through product placements, just through watching the TV, whatever pops up there. It's when you're on the internet and just scrolling around, and how many display ads are popped up everywhere. Between everything, you are going to get a huge amount of messages. So for anyone to break through that noise, it is difficult. And that's why you need to have that strong relationships with your customers, and you really need to build up that following quite carefully. But with direct mail, it's a very easy way of cutting the noise, and it's actually really high up in terms of ROI as well. So it's often called snail mail, and it's often kind of associated as being dead, and it's not something you do anymore. But if anything, the fact that less people are doing it is actually the biggest reason why you should. So my previous background, I worked at a vet charity called PDSA, and direct mail was huge still for them, even up until a couple of years ago. It's still absolutely massive, and there's just so many clever ways that you can work with direct mail. And it's not a case of, oh, I'm going to send a letter out to someone. Think about it more of how you're going to stand out in the post. What can you give them in the post that's just going to make them go, oh, that's interesting? And you'll find that even if you get spam or things through the post, you will always look at it. The amount of times that I'm sure you'll go to your letterbox, you'll get your post out and you'll flick through it. Yes, some of it won't be relevant and you'll throw it away, but if there's something that's relevant and something that stands out, you always look at it. So everyone that you send it to, as long as they still live at that address and it's not an abandoned house, it will get eyes on it. So it is worth flagging that direct mail, it's actually 1% on average behind social in terms of ROI, despite the fact that it does have a bigger expense in terms of actually getting it printed and sent out. Obviously it's behind email, but email's just on a whole kind of different scale on that front. It's a really great strategy as well to use alongside everything else. So I would never suggest just sending something out like you've done yourself, Lydia, with Oakwood. It's about kind of supporting it then with other channels. So supporting it with social, supporting it through emails. It even works to send someone an email and say, oh, we've just popped something in the post for you. It should be arriving with you in the next few days. And it just gives them a little bit of an excitement and a little bit of a buzz, thinking, oh, I wonder what that could be. And then it's just kind of, they're expecting it then as well. And one of the traditional senses is that it kind of come full circle. With younger generations, direct mail was often, and I myself was one of them that always thought, no, I don't like getting anything through the post, and I opt for online for everything. But you kind of come a bit full circle in a way, and you almost like that actually when you do get something through the post from a brand and a company that you work alongside that you are familiar with, so if you're a dedicated customer of them, it actually almost gives a little bit of romanticism, because it's almost like it's the old, going back to the times when you used to send love letters and things like that. It's just quite nice, and you almost feel, it can make you feel quite special if it's done in the right way. And also that kind of helps you to identify who you should send it to. So I would never suggest sending direct mail to your whole database. I would pick your loyal customers and pick those that are more special, and pick those that have probably spend more with you or are worth more, have been with you for a long time. Because it does cost more to send out, and you are going to get more back from those customers. There is a reason why they are your loyal customers, and the reason why they probably have their higher customer lifetime value with you. And the biggest one, like I said, it doesn't have to be boring. So I really would suggest that if you ever wanted to do direct mail, just think outside the box. Even if you Google different things and different shapes, there are so many things that you can do with print that it is absolutely crazy. And one of the things that worked really well for PDSA, it was literally one of their biggest in terms of getting money in. I don't know if anyone will have had them through the post, but this little square piece of card with 3 holes in it, which was sticky, and they were called pound cards. And it was just something that came through and just asked someone if they could donate £3, and you literally stuck £3, £1 each into each of the holes and sent it back. And that used to get a huge amount of responses. And it's just something that's quite clever, quite different, but it's very simple. And it makes donating very simple. It was a case of, if you've got spare £3 coins, you just put them in and send it back. You don't have to do anything else with it. You've not got to log into anything to send money over. You've not got to fill a massive form in to donate money. So those things can work really well. One thing I will say about direct mail quickly actually as well is, if you wanted to grow your business, there is another option. You don't have to, although the responses you get is very different. So I would always say, obviously, trial it with the customers that you have. But with direct mail, you do have the opportunity to build brand awareness and grow your business and reach new customers. So through Royal Mail, and there's companies such as a company called Market Reach, which is part of the Royal Mail, you can do door drops. So on that level, what they can do is the data analysts can pull together data to target very key demographics that you want to look at. So you take your target audience, say who they are, and they will kind of pick up on where they live in the country. And they can go right down to postcode level. So it could be literally the very beginning of your postcode. It's like my CW25. So they can get very granular in that. And yes, there is some elements of it's almost guesswork. It's based on the average of what's in that community. So for example, where I live, it's a small village, and predominantly the age of the community used to be very old, and it's changed significantly now. But because of that, I used to get a lot of Aged UK things through the post, which obviously aren't relevant for me. But with farmers in particular, it's a lot easier, because you can actually target places that are called farm, which will give you a big insight into that. And you can just send them something through, and it's completely cold, but it's not as intrusive, because it's just going through the post. And a lot of the time, if it's not relevant, if they're not interested, they'll just throw it away. And then email. So this is kind of my home in a way. Email for me is an absolute no-brainer, and one should be doing it, and should be doing it well. It's something that you don't have to do a lot of. You don't have to send a million emails. It's about doing it right and sending the right amount of emails for your customers and making sure that you're tailoring them. So to give you a few stats on email, an email is 45 times more likely to be seen compared with a post on Facebook. The ROI of email is well over 100%. So it is a channel that is very good at retaining your customers, and it is well known that retaining your customers is a lot cheaper than getting new. 59% of respondents in a marketing survey said that marketing emails influence their purchasing decision. It's mostly because people like to see the offers. You can deliver personalised and relevant messages, so kind of gone are the days where email should be seen as spam. If anyone ever kind of says that your email is spam, then you're not doing something right. And it's just working out a bit of a journey in terms of when you should be sending your customers an email, what that email should say, what do you want them to do off that at the back of that email. If there is no purpose to that email, so you can't answer the last question, then I would question why you're sending the email in the first place. It can save you time on admin. So with a lot of just the bog standard emails that you get with regards to when you buy things, the automatic order confirmations, the welcome emails when you sign up for things, all of that can easily be automated. So you don't actually have to physically go in, get data and send it every time. So I would always say if you're going to do email as well, if there's anything that could be automated, try and automate it from the off, because it will save you. It's a lot more in terms of the setup, but once it's set up, it will save you a lot more in the long run. It improves communication without being too invasive. Email is one of those that a lot of us don't mind giving out. Most people tend to have junk email or an email address that they use that they give out to people, and then you have the email that you don't. And I think that just means that you're more open to actually getting people to sign up to your emails, and you are more likely to have that data to speak to them, and a wider number of them as well. 72% of people prefer to receive promotions via email. It's a huge one. Most people actually say that they sign up for emails purely because of offers and promotions. So if you ever do offers, it is always worth putting it out over email. They are some of the best emails in terms of performance. And then just a reminder that email and SMS go hand in hand. So if you've got phone numbers for people in terms of like their mobile, instead of ringing them, maybe consider what you could send them in text, because at the end of the day, most of us have our phone with us all the time. Farmers are very much included in that, and they will walk around with their phone all the time using maybe the new apps for the software. And by sending text message, the majority of people will always open a text message. The only ones that probably won't is the ones that have failed to send in the first place. So if you send a text message out to 100 people and it says that 90 of them have actually been delivered, then 90 of them will be opened. How many we've taken in fully is a different case, but given that the SMS are so limited in characters, because when you send through a text system, it is still important to remember that you do tend to get charged more if you're over a certain amount of characters. It kind of goes back to the tradition where you used to have a limit on characters. So back to the days, for those that remember, of actually having to send a text message in text language because you wanted to fit in all of what you wanted to say, but you only had 160 characters. They actually do charge based on the 160 characters. So if you go over that, it's almost classed as 2 credits with a lot of systems. So it's something always to be quite mindful of. But with email, it's a very simple thing that can be done. And most of you will probably have CRM systems in place where you can actually send emails from. And I always think it's worth, if you can, to not have tools everywhere and not be using all these different tools for everything. If you've got a tool that can be utilized for email and SMS and to actually give you that automation and give you the ability to personalize emails, then it's better to do it that way, because all your kind of data is in one place and it will just automatically feed in and come out. Your alternative to that, really, if you wanted to kind of go onto a big scale with email marketing, is you'd be looking a lot more at bigger specialized organizations rather than the MailChimp and Campaign Monitor, for example, So MailChimp and Campaign Monitor are perfectly good to send your emails and manage them. But if you really wanted to get clever and go really kind of granular with what you're doing, you would be looking at specialized agencies that build their own software that will take your database in-house, and they will host it on their own servers as well, and they will kind of build a single view database for you, so that they can easily then come up with different segmentation work and things like that. But that is a whole new cost level, so it's important to kind of work out exactly what you would want to get from each channel, and look at what kind of investment you're willing to put into it. With email, there is a level of investment, so I would always say it is worth investing in it, but it's just finding the right level that suits you and is going to give you what you want. If you want to conquer the world and you want to send the best emails that literally have everything personalized to the point of things like with your Nectar card and your club card at Tesco, when emails come through, there is a snazzy way of actually pulling in the key purchases that you make and similar products, so similar to what you would get with the vouchers that they would give you in the supermarket. There's an ability for emails to do that, but there is a lot of work that goes in behind that, and there's a lot of coding and things that just general bodies like us can't do. So you need a great system with the tech people behind it that will do that. So yeah, it's worth looking at what kind of things you want to get out of email, because if you do want to go to that level, you are going to have to kind of have those conversations about a bigger investment. Starting out though, I would always suggest MailChimp, Campaign Monitor. They're absolutely fine. Campaign Monitor in particular is actually quite good in terms of setting up automated emails and transactional emails. So anything like your order confirmations, things that you don't need an unsubscribe for as well. But yeah, with email though, I could bang on about it forever. So if anyone did have any questions, feel free just to pop me an email separately and I'm happy to give advice. I'm also very happy to give my honest opinion on emails if you ever wanted to send across an example of what you've been sending out, and I can give some honest feedback to give you a bit of an idea of where to go.
Could I just ask a couple of questions, Liz? Those figures,
Yeah.
so the 100, are they end user figures, as in the farmer response? Or because obviously we're complex in that our customers are predominantly merchants,
Yeah.
And the retailers, but we are obviously wanting to target the end user being the farmer as well, but we don't sell direct to that farmer.
Yeah, no, these are B2C. So
okay.
These are direct to
consumer. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a very similar way. I think my dad's actually one of your merchants. So I kind of know how they work as well. And it is very different with regards to merchants, because for them, although email is growing, there's still some that are a bit further behind. But email is a very quick way of getting through to them, because I also know how hard it is to get them on the phone. Especially when the phones are still ringing with the farmers quite a lot. I think it is always worth it. It's just in terms of frequency, that's where I feel the biggest difference is. If you're going direct to customers, so the farmers, for example, you can email them quite regularly. You can email them every week, or if not a bit more, as long as it's right message and it's tailored and you're not just sending them everything. When it comes to merchants, I feel like it's taken in a bit more if it's almost a monthly newsletter and then maybe an ad hoc thing for offers, because then at least within that monthly you can kind of give them an update of what's happening. I would also actually say that with merchants, especially thinking of my dad, they would respond quite well to direct mail, because it's something that's actually on the desk as well, even if it's just something quite small.
And that
or
would
if
be
it's just
that direct mail to the store, not home then, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So I think it's just sometimes it just stands out a little bit, and they are still quite traditional in terms of just kind of flicking through and passing it around the office as well. So those things could work really well. But I would say, yeah, with email, the biggest difference really would be frequency and what you email. I think a monthly newsletter would be really great for merchants, and almost gives them a little bit of a boost in terms of maybe if you give them more of an idea of how they're performing. I don't know how far you'd want to go with things, but in terms of competitions and almost pitting them against each other to try and get the bigger sales. because I know for a fact that if they see someone's name that says, oh, they sold X amount, or they were like top sellers of this product this month, it would certainly give someone I know a kick up the bum to
making competitive. And the other thing quickly, because we sell that way and we sell through merchants, our communication with farmers can be a bit more limited.
Yeah.
Because we don't have our own database, if you like, particularly of farmers, and we try to generate that when we're at shows. But now obviously we've lost that sort of show communication. What is the best way to try and generate a database of farmers in these times when we're not at shows communicating with them? Is it still that drive in a competition through a website or something like that, or?
Yeah, so I think across email and social is probably your best bet, which Anna will go on to anyway at the moment, to build awareness. I mean, one thing I'd always say with the way that kind of you guys would work is to use your merchants as well. So obviously they'll need to go through the relevant GDPR element in terms of making sure there's permission, but there's ways in terms of if they're able to give third-party data, they could give that to you, because at the end of the day you are relevant. So there's different levels of third-party consent in a way. It's almost like because they buy your products, there's almost a certain element that they're already a little bit involved and invested in you. And also there's also kind of the more hands-on approach, which obviously is probably more suited outside of a pandemic. But one thing that I know other merchants have worked well with is having actually the sales guys, they rock up and they actually go on a run with them. So for example, the way that WFS work is that they go out they have mobile shops as well that drive around to certain routes. And it's been known before now where suppliers have also sent someone, and they've gone out with one of the drivers for the day and actually have met customers face to face in that way, knowing that they're going to go through the day and meet 10 to 15 customers throughout the day and have a good chat, and just even selling products if they don't already use them. But social, I think, should be your first port of call with that, and it could be paid social and boosting posts. So I'll leave that one for Anna. I'll stop.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Social.
So just before I sort of start with the presentation, so from my perspective, with your company, I would probably be looking to use paid social and drive people to your website to download something. So it might be a checklist or an article, and then you can get like for people to actually access that information, they can have to put their email address in, and that would be a good way from sort of a top level to get new customers like into your database to then actually start sort of like promoting sort of the slightly harder sell. So that would be my advice from a social media perspective.
Okay, thank you, that's really interesting.
And then just to chip in as well, just so you know, is what Liz and Anna said is completely right. But then once you start to build that database, you can then use paid social for lookalike audiences.
Okay.
So you could either upload your email database, and then Facebook would look at the demographics within that email database and look for people that are similar, they look like that, or if you just simply wanted to drill down to a demographic, and then as you start to get those sorts of people clicking on your ads, Facebook would have the ability to serve that to a lookalike audience, and some of those audience campaigns that we've been running for clients have worked really well, even when they are very cold and they've not known of the brand previously, simply because of the relevance. I'll shut up now.
So like Liz with email, social media is sort of an area that I have quite a big interest in, and it's something I think every business should be on social media in some form, in my opinion. That is my personal opinion. Social media is an absolutely brilliant way to get your personality and information about your business across to potential clients, and actually also your current customer base as well. So actually it was initially set up as a personal platform. So the likes of Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, they're all really primarily a consumer platform. But actually now with the likes of your paid advertising on social and like boosting posts, it can be a really effective marketing tool, and you can sort of capture people who could be potential customers, but actually they don't quite realise it yet. So it's very much at the top of the funnel. So in terms of paid, you can pay to reach a larger audiences than those who might like your page. So like Andy was saying, you could create a lookalike audience for a post that you, like a checklist, like we've already discussed. Or you can just use organic, which is completely free. And then primarily you're going to be pushing content out to those who like your page, or and if you can get them to share that content, then that's then how you reach a larger audience again. But it's a lot steadier growth with organic. So I personally, a combination of the two work best. So there's 5 sort of key top channels which I think can work really well for businesses. So you've got Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest and Instagram. But I think it's really important to just highlight that actually it isn't essential to be on every single one of those platforms. It's very easy when you're sort of first starting out to be like, right, I need to get on every single one and be putting content on every single one all the time. But actually, are your key demographics on every single one of those platforms? The likelihood is they're probably not. So even if you can choose 2 platforms that you've got your target audience on, you'd be better to focus time and money on those platforms than sort of like spreading yourself too thin. And actually it's sort of it's a wasted effort. If we were on Pinterest, for example, with Hills Green, it is very much likely to be a wasted effort because the types of people we're looking for to work with would not be on Pinterest. So that's a really important thing to remember. And then across the different platforms, you might have several different audiences you're wanting to target. So if we use a rural professional as an example, they might be on LinkedIn and they might be on Facebook and Twitter. So a rural professional, it doesn't matter what kind of business they actually are, but they're a professional in the rural sector. The likelihood is that referral work is going to be quite high up on the agenda for getting work in. So LinkedIn is a really good platform for that. So in terms of the messaging on those platforms, I would always be steering the messaging on LinkedIn towards the professional audience, which would be very different to Facebook and Twitter, where I would be actively trying to reach like the end customer. So it's just important to differentiate the messaging accordingly, because how you would speak to your professional, like other professionals, is very different to how you would speak to the end user, basically, of your product. So there are some key benefits to social media, which I'll just highlight now. So first off, it really helps to build brand awareness with new and existing customers. So we always try to put a small budget, so say £50 aside each month, to boost posts out, like Andy was saying, boost like relevant posts to our target audience, to sort of keep getting the likes, keep getting more people sort of aware of your business. And that's a really good way to build on the brand awareness as well. Actually, it was something that Lydia actually brought up. It's a really good channel to humanize your brand and get your personality across, and the personality of your business. It's really easy, and it's something we've discussed in like the sales process or a roundtable. It's very easy to say yes to every single person that comes and asks for your help. But actually, if you can show the personality of your brand, the people that actually then do come to you are going to be people that are probably more likely to want to work with you and have very similar values. Yeah, so it's a really good way to just get the personality of the brand across, and get sort of like-minded clients as well. And then the third sort of benefit is it's a great way to become a thought leader. So if you can sort of show that you're an expert in what you do, and you'll then drive inquiries in the long run, because your reputation will build. So as you can see, there was a LinkedIn study, and 80% of buyers thought that leadership built trust with a brand. So if you can show you really, you know what you're doing, people start to build trust in you as well. Yeah, so it's a really good one, particularly for rural professionals. So the next one is social media is really good to keep you sort of front of mind. It's a great chance to be entertaining, informative, have lots of different types of posts going out, and particularly with Facebook's algorithm, only 10% of your audience will see each of your posts. So if you can be constantly putting posts out there, then you'll get more engagement, more people will see your posts, and then actually you'll be front of mind when people start to then come to those decisions that they need to make when it's time to, say, buy a product or get in touch for a service. The next one is, it's great to increase website traffic. So if you're putting blogs out on your website, social media is a really good place to share those blogs and drive traffic back to your website. It's a sharing platform at the end of the day. So the more content you can share on there, the better. And just finally, in terms of the benefits, I mean, there's loads, but these are just a few. Social media, because it's quite, how do you describe it? It's a very informal platform, sorry. So it's a lot easier to send someone a direct message on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, than it is to actually go on their website and fill out a contact form or give them a call. And there's sort of like no obligation. So you're likely to drive more leads and then start to build the relationships with the potential clients. So for example, we've got a client who gets like loads of direct messages, and it's real people at the end of the phone answering those messages. So then they know that they spoke with Amanda. So then when they get on the phone and they actually do want to purchase, they go, well, can I speak to Amanda, please? So you're starting to build that relationship and gain that trust. Okay, so the next bit is around the importance of a good website. So your website is your shop window, and the simplest way to look at it is looking at, my website is basically a high street shop. How am I going to get people into that shop and to make a purchase or fill out a contact form? So I want you to ask yourself these questions. So, is your website clean and well organized? Is your website easy to navigate? Is your website clear and concise? Does your website function well? Will your website pique the interest of your target audience? And does your website show who you are as a business? So I'll just give you a few seconds just to think about that. How many people could say yes to, could anyone say yes to all of those things? No?
I could in about 6 weeks' time when our new website goes live.
Yeah. If you say yes to that, then you've got a good website, and that's really great. If not, then now is the time to get that problem solved, because particularly throughout COVID-19, retailers have seen an additional 1.5 billion users on e-commerce websites alone. And now people are sort of starting to see the ease in that. in my opinion, it's only ever going to increase, because it's so much easier to go on a website and buy something and have to troll to a shop, go into the shop, buy something, buy about 10 other things whilst you're there, go to the post office, then come home. It's so much quicker and more efficient. And as people's lives get busier, that is only going to increase further. So here you can see a very beautifully presented farm shop. Now, this is how I want you to think about your website. You can see they've got pineapples in one places, they've got fruit and veg in another. It's all segmented really, really well. And there's a really, it's clear, it's easy to sort of analyze in the brain. That's how you want your website to look. This photo, I know it's a bit blurry, but it's not so much. There's no system, there's no organization to it. And if I went in there to try and buy something, I wouldn't even know where to start. And I probably wouldn't even be able to find the thing I was trying to buy. So it's really important that you've got a clear system in place. And my biggest top tips would be, don't make your users jump through hoops to try and find the things they want, because the more you do that, the more drop-offs you'll get and the less conversions you'll get in the long run. And then just aside of that, use the data. I mean, there's so many different data sources you can use now. So you've obviously got analytics, and we use something called Hotjar, which basically tracks users. And they're both free. So use that data to actually make informed decisions on how you change your website, because you're generally on your website probably every day. So you've got to come at it with a sort of fresh pair of eyes, because you will know your website inside out, but the user will not. So they would definitely be my 2 top tips for your website.
Thanks, Anna. Really, really insightful stuff, and just to really hammer home the point that Anna made at the start of that is your website is your shop window, and the biggest changes I've seen, and I do bang on about it. So you've probably heard me say it before, but traditionally, when people were referring others to, whether it's from a professional nature, whether it's an accountant, solicitor, or it's a farmer recommending another product, you would be given the details, perhaps the phone number of the key person you need to speak to, and you'd be getting in touch. Now it's very much you need to speak to Andy at Hills Green, and then you just go and Google Hills Green and find their contact details. Whilst they're looking for the contact details, they're browsing on your website, seeing what you're up to, seeing what case studies you've got on there, what testimonials, and have you got any star ratings when you've done the initial Google search. All of that then, makes a decision as to whether you're even going to get in touch with that business or take it any further. So I can't sort of speak strongly enough about the importance of making sure that your online presence is top notch, because coming full circle to all being well when the Agri shows and outside events start taking place next year, online is not going to go away, and it's going to really play a pivotal role within your overall marketing strategy. So just to wrap up, I'm conscious of time, but I just wanted to touch on building relationships, because very much we are social animals, and particularly myself, I love speaking to people, understanding their business, and really building that relationship. And I suppose the biggest challenge I've had personally is not be able to meet someone new, go for a coffee and really feel like I'm getting to know somebody. I've looked at different channels and different ways of doing things. So as we said, the large face-to-face gatherings are off, but I'm pretty much certain that the most talked about word in 2020 has got to be Zoom. Everybody's Zooming. Grandparents, whatever age, you've got yourself a Zoom account, and you've been interacting over things like this. And what I've found is, yes, you haven't got the handshake and you haven't got the brew and you sat a metre away from each other, but it's not too far away in terms of having that video interaction and being able to start to build up that relationship. So I definitely think that things are going to change in the future, and when more face-to-face contact can be had, it's not always essential. Speaking to somebody the other day, perhaps it's more essential of a first meeting, but then after that, video contact is quite sufficient rather than meeting up every month. What we've been doing with clients is little and often catch-ups. So where I would typically go and visit a client maybe once a month, every other month, and have a proper sit-down meeting, instead I'm having a 20-minute catch-up call once a week, every other week. And actually we're probably seeing it's a hell of a lot more efficient. I haven't got the travel time. You haven't got the niceties for half an hour to justify the travel time. And instead you're getting a lot more done because you're just keeping in contact, and you're actually, you're more in touch with what's going on with that client's business. Obviously, we're doing stuff like this. I definitely think there's a big opportunity for more content through webinars like this. And what I've really felt has been a game changer is when I saw 20 farmers on Zoom for their monthly study group. I think what Rachel said at the beginning of the call, in terms of it's forced a lot of change. And actually, once those farmers got on Zoom, they felt that the usual chat that they would have had at the study group in terms of the challenges that they're facing at the minute, and what new things they're trying, and getting that interaction for the group. Yes, it wasn't normal, but it was quite sufficient to be done over Zoom. And I think now people are, in particular farmers, are more open to that sort of meeting. We're part of the co-op dairy group with our farm. And yesterday there was another sort of quarterly session, all done via Zoom. People have sent in photos and videos of what they've been up to over the last couple of months. Really passionate about talking about their business, what they've been doing, and again, a real simple way to share that content with others. As we get into, hopefully, the relaxation of lockdown, small focus face-to-face sessions are starting to happen. I'm referencing farm quite a lot, mainly because you are all working with farmers, but rather than having the big farm walks, maybe 5 or 6 on farm for a key topic area. Again, farmers are always at home when they're on farm, and if you can set those sorts of events up at a distance, I think they can work very well. And then just in terms of standard communication channels that are becoming more of the norm, but we've definitely seen an increase during the pandemic, is making better use of WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups, just as a way of keeping in touch with clients, customers, colleagues, with key information. So, and obviously social media. Thank you very much, Liz, for controlling the slides for me. We are slightly over, but hopefully